It's time for On Point with Julian Phillips.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm sure you remember that, reciting it in school. Those of you who are old enough, you have to look at the flag and put your right hand over your heart, so on and so forth. We did this every day. The Pledge of Allegiance was written by a socialist minister by the name of Francis Bellamy. It was a pledge that he had written for all countries, but the United States quickly adopted it, and in 1923, they added onto it the United States of America, pledging the flag too. Fast forward to 1854, under the threat of communism, President Dwight D. Eisenhower urged Congress to add the words "under God," and so it was adopted, and there it is. With liberty and justice for all. The question is, for this On Point, is there truly liberty and justice for all? For Colin Kaepernick, who knelt in peaceful protest and was met by all sorts of castanation and indignation and by people across this country. But then you had protesters, as I'm going to call them politely, on January 6th, who used the flag to beat police officers and also used it as a ramming rod to make their way into the nation's capital, a symbol of democracy. But yet and still, lawmakers, more than one, call them patriots. Liberty and justice for all. My father fought under this flag, but he fought under a segregated army, only to come back home to Jim Crow and segregation. Liberty and justice for all. Well, what about those folks who are facing police brutality that Colin Kaepernick was demonstrating peacefully against? Liberty and justice for all. Is it truly for everybody? That is a question. And who are we really as Americans? We are at a crossroads here. How do we get past this? We're going to talk about this with Eric Ham, who joins us once again, our best-selling author and political analyst out of Washington, D.C., to break down these issues. Eric, thanks for joining us on this edition of On Point. This is going to be a very critical one for us. Liberty and justice for all. And, before this show yesterday, we were talking about three critical components. Mass shootings in this country, COVID-19, where 500,000 people have lost their lives within the span of a year, more than 500,000 now. And of course, the ever-present issue, America's original sin, race. Let's focus first, because we have a lot to cover and not a whole lot of time to cover it in. But mass shootings here. My question to you, sir, is there liberty and justice just for those folks who want to safeguard the Second Amendment and their rights, but then not for those people who have lost their lives over decades? We can go back to Columbine, and then, of course, recently 2 mass shootings within the last week here in this country, culminating, of course, with the one in Boulder, Colorado. Is there liberty and justice for all in this particular case?
Julian, I think that's a very salient question. And I think the answer to the question is simply that what we are seeing play out is that you see policy as well as you see ideology trumping the idea of not only liberty, but also life, because people are making conscious decisions saying that my freedom, my ability to hold on to weapons is more important than life. And we see that, and we can tie in fact, not only just to how we treat our guns, but also the mask that we are now, not for the mask that we have to wear in order to protect ourselves as well as others. There are those who refuse to wear them, which means they simply do not value others' lives and they cloak it in freedoms. But then again, is this not a land? Is this not the nation where we have the right to live? And it seems that what people continue to say over and over and over is, no, you do not, if it infringes upon my freedoms.
So, Eric, I guess the question is for these people who are reciting this issue and trying to defend their freedoms, whether they're freedoms to own guns, and no one's saying that they can't own guns, they're just saying we need background checks. Maybe we don't need an AR-15 to defend ourselves with. Those folks who, for instance, don't want to wear masks, okay. But what about those who might be infringed upon your ability to infect them? Who are these people? Explain the mentality, if you can. I know you're not a psychologist, but if you can kind of try to explain the mentality of these people who hide behind politics, who say they hide behind the Constitution and their freedoms. Who are these folks?
Julian, that's a really good question. And I think one way to answer that, coming from a political perspective, you started off your show reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. And you're right. That was something as children we did growing up. We pledge our allegiance to this country. We pledge our allegiance to the ideas that form this nation. We pledge our allegiance to this Constitution, to this form of government that we willfully and willingly subject ourselves to, because it provides us safety. It provides us protection. And so I think what we are seeing here are people who do not pledge themselves to this nation, who don't pledge themselves to the construct of the government that we are operating under. And that's what we're seeing play out. And it's not just in gun rights. It's not in the rights of our ability to stay safe from a pandemic. It's also playing out in voting rights, because you have states all across the country now saying we are now actively trying to suppress and eliminate your basic right to vote. So we've got right to live, check. Right to vote, check. These are part and parcel, Julian, of democracy, of American democracy. That one key tool that the United States for centuries now has tried to export across the globe. We here at home are now saying we don't want this. And we're saying it with our actions every single day.
So basically, Eric, you're saying here that we perhaps in the greatest country on the face of the earth are and have been living a lie. And that lie meaning that freedom for this country is really not meant for everybody. Freedom is only meant for a certain select few who adhere to certain components of what they believe are the tenets of the Declaration of Independence, the tenets of the Constitution, the tenets of, even before that, the Federalist Papers. It's really not designed for all of us, is it?
Well, Julian, it's not even about the tenets of the Declaration of Independence or the Federalist Papers, because what we are seeing play out is we are seeing even lawmakers picking and choosing what they are going to adhere to. Keep in mind, every lawmaker, swears an oath to protect the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So that's anything outside of this country and anything inside this country that is a threat to that. Mm-hmm. But what we see when we see lawmakers who refuse to mask up on the floor of the House of Representatives, when we see lawmakers, who are willing to, bring their weapons into the well of the floor of the House of Representatives. When we see lawmakers who are saying, over my dead body, or like Lindsey Graham, who says, I will filibuster until I have no more breath in my body so that voter suppression laws go into place. We are seeing lawmakers who are basically saying, I do not agree with and I will not uphold this oath that I just swore to. That's what we're seeing. So it's like you can't have one piece of it and not have it all. You can't. There's no such thing, Julian, as a little bit of pregnant.
Right. So, Eric, we look at the Pledge of Allegiance. One nation under God, indivisible. Indivisible. We are very divided right now. Now, one could argue that we're more divided than we have been ever in our history. I would kind of doubt that. We did have a civil war where like 800,000 people were killed. But we are in very tenable times. I guess the question becomes, if you take the emotion out of this and you look at just the tenets of what freedom is and what liberty is, and we're having such a hard time coming to an agreement on what freedom is and what liberty is, where are we as a country? And how can we effectively move forward?
Julian, when so much of what was created, when so much of what was built on a falsehood, was built on a misnomer, was built on a lie, at some point, it gets harder and harder to sustain that. And you can acknowledge it and try to move past it, or you can continue to try to perpetuate the lie, like we have seen from Mitch McConnell, where he says America has moved past its race problem. We elected a black president. The filibuster was never implemented as a tool to eliminate racial unity and harmony in this nation. He worked for a member of the Senate who actually was the lone Southern politician who actually said that, who actually supported eliminating the filibuster because he knew that this was going to be an impediment to passage of the Civil Rights Act. And when he did so, every intern in his office resigned except for Mitch McConnell. So he knows exactly what that filibuster was meant for and what it was meant to do. But to stand before the press and say, this is not what this is for, that's a lie. It is a lie, and he knows it because he was there when his boss actually stood up against it. So he knows that it's a lie. And so the question becomes, how long do you continue to perpetuate this? And how long can a house stand on a lie?
From the biblical text, of course, it says, a house divided against itself, can't stand.
Cannot stand.
And so it's true. So we find ourselves in a situation where we are at a crossroads in this country, and we've been here before, but it's very critical now in what we face, where the veil has been torn off of all of our fallacies, all of our insecurities. The dirty laundry is being aired around the world, and the question is, what can we do? How can we save face? Can we get to a point in this country where we can really confront reality? Can we put the nation, our lawmakers and our citizens on a couch and diagnose and accept, what the diagnosis is and move forward? Can we do that, Eric? I just don't know.
Yeah, it's a good question because, look, there have been those that have been pushing the nation to do that for a very long time. And the nation has made steps. They have made steps. They have made strides. I mean, as Mitch McConnell said, yes, the nation elected a black president. That's something that was unheard of 30, 40 years ago. So, but is that a tool of a nation moving past its trauma, its deficiencies, its brokenness, or is that simply a tool of the fact that the demographics of this country has simply shifted, which I think is what we're seeing play out, and that is why you're seeing so much white grievance, so much hate, and why even the FBI director has said emphatically and publicly that white nationalism and white supremacy is the biggest threat to the homeland. It is not those people coming from across the border. It is not COVID-19. It is white nationalism.
Well, let me see if I can make this a little bit more simple for those folks to kind of understand who may disagree with this. Race obviously is a basis for a lot of stuff when it comes to liberty and justice in this country. We understand, especially those of us who are people of color. Perhaps a major proponent of that. But in order to really get past that, in order for people to come to a point where they have to accept who they are, they can only accept who they are if they accept the truth. And, there's been much talk about re-education, saying, oh, okay, well, cancel culture. No. But this kind of telling the truth. Like I talked about, several months ago that, Columbus, did not discover America. I mean, it's just a simple fact. I mean, and some people just don't want to believe that. Or if they do, like Governor Cuomo said, well, yeah, he did some bad things, but, he's still a part of the fabric of who we are as Italian Americans. And I'm saying myself, this is completely insanity. So we're doing the same thing over and over again, and we're expecting different results. And the definition of insanity is that you're not going to get different results if you do the same thing over and over again. And you have people that do not want to accept the truth. Not that anybody's better than anybody else, not that anybody's superior than anybody else, but just the basic facts. Just like Columbus did not discover America, that we have an issue of race in this country. We have an issue of people that don't really understand what the Constitution is, that folks are not going to take away their Second Amendment rights. You can still have guns, God, if you still want them, you can do all those things, but all the negative stuff, all the lies just seem to just kind of pile on. It's like a tsunami, and you just can't get, past that current. You can't fight that current going upstream. And here we still are. So my question is, this is who we are, really? And what can we do about this?
Yes, Julian, this is who we are. And this is who we have always been. And I think it's been clear to us. Look, the United States has always been prone to and had a propensity for violence. When you talk about Christopher Columbus, he is the one who this nation has decided this was the man who discovered America. But as you just also mentioned, he was a very, very violent man. That is the one who we have chosen to say this is representative of who we are. This very violent man. Violence is in the DNA of this nation. From Christopher Columbus, who was a very violent man, to also the vestiges of slavery, which were also marked and characterized by its sheer brutality and its violence. The nation was built on violence, on the shedding of blood, of red bodies, of black bodies. That is who we are. I mean, we cannot run from that past. We cannot run from that history. The only thing we can do is try to atone for it. But we simply are unable or unwilling to do that. And we see that every day in the number of mass shootings that take place because we as a nation are willing to allow that to occur. 500,000 people and more and counting, Julian, continue to die every day from a pandemic. That all we needed to do was wear a mask. So the United States is emblematic of death. That's who we are.
Yeah,
That we have not exported democracy around the world. But we certainly have exported death, because we are by very definition a war machine. We have the biggest military in the world. We can destroy this world 100 times over with all the weapons that we have in the United States. That's what we do. That's who we are.
Eric Ham, I know you got to go, and we're not going to solve the world's problems, but it's it's kind of a depressing thing to hear these things and just to get to the reality of who we are. But I guess my thing is, once you accept who you are, then maybe there can be change. And I'm hoping through the leadership that we have now in this country that a good percentage of us can get to the point of saying, okay, guys, I guess this is who we are. Let's see how we can atone and how we can change. Look, there's going to be a lot of stuff happening between now and next week, so I'm sure we'll have a number of things to talk about. But I don't want to leave necessarily the audience in a depressing mode, but I'll talk to them after you split off the show. But look, thanks for joining us, and thanks for your insight again, Eric. It's always great to have you, and we'll see you next week.
You bet. Thanks, Julian.
So, I guess this is who we are as a country. Liberty and justice for all is really only liberty and justice for some, and it's been that way for a long time. And if you take the emotion out of it, you got to come, if you have any sense of sanity, that this is who we are. But the question is, how can we change this? I'm a man of hope. I believe that despite how this country was formed through the blood of red people and black people, that there is a purpose for this country that has not been realized yet. How we get there, I don't know. But I do believe that we, as Martin Luther King says, as a people, as a nation, will get to the promised land. How long that takes, how many more tragedies, how much injustice will have to happen before that takes place, I don't know. What I do know as a journalist, as a political analyst, as an historian, that usually righteousness always wins out, but it always comes at a cost. If you look at history and the world wars and genocides and everything, righteousness usually wins out in the end, but it does come at a cost. I'm going to keep my money bet on the United States of America, despite liberty and justice not being for all at this point. That liberty and justice will prevail for all at some point. I don't know how, but I do know by our program and others, and talking about the truth and exposing the truth, no matter how hard it may be, that hopefully in our lifetime we'll get there. But if not in our lifetime, I do believe we as a people and as a country will eventually get to the promised land. Thanks for joining us for this week on Point, and we'll see you next week.